Hello. It's a slightly different video today because I'm upstairs in my studio that I often use for different things. And I want to share screen with you because there's something rather important that I wanted to share with you today that's come to my attention. There is a consultation. Let's share the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. There's a consultation on draft legislation to support identity verification. So this is what the government are putting through, and they're putting it through between now, from the 4th of January, which is obviously we're no longer the 4th of January as I record this, it's the 11th, until the 1st of March, which essentially means the rest of this month and next month, and that's it. And people have a chance to say whether they want the ID, the support identity verification. So I thought we'd have a look at the paper because it's something that unless people know it's there, I think the government will just assume that everybody's in favour of it. Unless there's any objection, they're just going to say, yeah, no, nobody disagreed. As far as I know, it's not really being publicised anywhere. It came to me through one of my viewers. So this may be a bit longer than my normal videos, and I understand that. I'll leave a link in the description where you can take part in the consultation and make your own personal views known. However, I should say that the paper is written in a very strange way to guide you almost to pretty much agree with everything they say. So you have to have your wits a little bit about you, how you answer some of the questions. There's 10, I think there's 10 main questions. So let's have a quick look at it. This isn't my normal way of doing things, and I'm not particularly clever at this sort of thing, but I thought it would be worth to have a look at it. So this will take you to a page. My link will take you to a page which will tell you about the consultation. It'll give you some information about why it's being done and how to do it. And then there is a link here where it says how to respond, and you click on that link and it will take you, I think, to the actual service. And then you get to, at the bottom, you can't see it on that screen, but at the bottom you'll get to the next page. It tells you all about that, and you go to the next page, and then you have to input your name. Sorry, my screen isn't particularly brilliant at this, but you have to put your name in and whether you're doing it on behalf of an organisation, in your email, and all of that sort of stuff. So, and that's where we get to do the actual survey. But this first part will show you the questions. And it's quite lengthy, and it gives you explanation all about it. So I just thought we'd go through the main questions. Now, the reason they're selling you this concept of a digital ID and as a verification, so that if you use different parts of the government, each time that you log on, you don't have to log in your details, you don't have to tell them who you are and prove who you are, so that they will already know this. So on the face of it, that sounds quite useful, doesn't it? Because if you, for example, if you're filing your inland revenue, say you're self-employed and you've got to do that, you log in as one would do anyway, but you would have a very simple login and the information all about you's there so they can verify you from however they decide that you log in. And then if you need to, I don't know, pay your council tax, or you need to do other services, perhaps with different parts of the government, again, you use this one unique identifier. But in order for that unique identifier to be a thing, you're actually got to provide a number of identifiers to you so that everybody, all these different departments that you might use, would be able to identify you. So on the surface, it sounds okay, doesn't it? It sounds quite useful. But anything that's easy and convenient may not always be, and appear to be of beneficial value, may not be as easy or as convenient for just you. It may be far more easier and convenient for a government body to know more about you, different departments to know more about you than you really want to say, because they'll have the same amount of information, pretty much everything that you've got about you, linked to this unique identifier. So that's where I think personally, and it's my own personal preference, that I think this is a terrible thing. Yes, it's convenient, and everybody, goes down, it's so much easier just to buy stuff online, use digital currencies and things like that, than using the autonomy of the individual, which I think is far more important, because it keeps you separate and it gives you the control, not the government or any authoritative body. This is why I think it's important to have a look at it. So without further ado, excuse me whilst I'm drinking coffee, it's very cold in my studio. Let's have a look at this paper and just go through some of these questions. So you have to respond on the online survey. It says there is an additional way to feed in your views, and you can, it looks like, send an email to send your response on an email address there. There's a little preliminary thing by a government minister, Alex Burhart, by the looks of things, MP, Parliamentary Secretary for the Cabinet Office. There he is in all his whatever, and a bit of useful blurb that you can read. An introduction here about the survey and what it can do. And here's the first sort of interesting bits. The new objectives. So the public service delivery, this is what PSD stands for, Public Service Delivery Power, for the Digital Economy Act, allows specific public authorities to share personal information for objectives which are set out in regulations. This information sharing power is aimed at improving and targeting public services to individuals and households in order to improve their well-being. Well, of course, they would say that, wouldn't they? So, and then it's got conditions of this, the purpose to improve targeting for people's well-being, the purpose to improve the well-being of individuals and households, purpose of supporting delivery of various functions. So it all sounds, very benign. And what have you. There's more information which you can read. I don't want to bore you with it because I want to just try and encourage you to take part. And if you agree with the way I think, to try and object to this as much as you can. But it's entirely up to you, and I'm not trying to persuade you or influence you in any shape or form. I'm just showing you what there is out there. So the proposal, here it is, the Government Digital Service, again, more of these acronyms, GDS, part of the Cabinet Office, is developing, in collaboration with other government departments, a digital identity verification service, which will allow people to create and reuse digital identities to access public services using the gov.uk one login on the website. So some sort of, a key to get into each place. They also want, and I can't remember where they've written this, there's a bit to tell us who and what departments will have this. We'll have a look at that in a second. And then we get into each individual question. But before I go that, I just want to come right back down somewhere here where we get Annex 4 they keep talking about. So Annex 4, these are the public authorities who would be able to share the data for the purposes of the proposed identification verification services. So, all these places here, the Home Office, the Ministry of Justice, the Lord Chancellor, Ministry of Defence, HM Revenue and Customs, the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, the Department of Education, Department of Work and Pension, Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, Department of Digital Culture, Media, Sport, HM Land Registry, an organisation which provides services to a specific public authority in connection with the specified above. That's very ominous. An organisation which provides services to a public authority. Who could that be? That could be a whole number of unknown companies that are providing services. They would also get the information that you provide. I'm not very happy with that. County councils, district councils, London boroughs, and various other, local authorities and things like that. in England and UK. Obviously, if you're in Wales, there are all the Welsh ministries, the Welsh Revenue Authority, similar sort of stuff. Again, a person providing services in connection with a specific objective, they would get it. Same with the Scottish bodies, and also new public authorities to be added to Schedule 4. So all these people would have access to that digital information about you. So that's quite frightening, I think. So let's get over to getting back to the first question. So yeah, hang on a minute. Just getting myself organised. We got back to the proposal. So it's a multiple choice questions that you get, and they're cleverly written in a way to make you sort of answer in as favourable, I think, to them as possible. But you may disagree. It's entirely up to you. So here we go. Let's get into these 10 questions, and then I'll send you on your way. And hopefully, within the next few weeks, you can get on board and say what you want about the about the IDs. So let's go back. The first question is about the data sharing objective. So the first question is, and this is a sort of very difficult question, I think. The first condition of the new objectives under Section 35 of the Digital Economy Act 2007 is that of data sharing should either, so sharing this data should either improve or target a public service to individuals or households, which of course, maybe, and provide benefit, whether financial or otherwise, to individuals and households. So it's saying that you share your data, the sharing of your data should improve and target and be beneficial. Well, how are you going to agree with that? So you've got the choices you get are strongly agree, neither agree or disagree, strongly disagree, or you don't know. So, question one in theory is saying, us sharing the data is supposed to improve everything. Well, I don't want you to share my data at all, but that's not an option on this question. So they're doing it in a psychological way to say, well, if we were sharing it, it should improve, shouldn't it? So are you going to say, no, it shouldn't improve, because you certainly don't want that, and you do want it to improve? So I'm not quite sure where I would go. I probably neither agree or disagree on that one personally. Let's go to the second question. Question number 2, the second condition is that data sharing should improve the well-being of individuals and households. Same sort of thing. To what extent do you agree with that? Well, should it improve that the sharing of data? It's been slewed that you wouldn't want to say no, would you? But if you say you do agree with it, are you then saying that you kind of agree with the whole idea of sharing data? So again, I'm going to be on the level there and say, well, I'm just neither not agreeing or disagreeing with it, because I don't want it to be shared. So I think it's a tricky one. Question 3 then, the third condition is that the data sharing should support the delivery, administration, monitoring, or enforcement of a service provided by a particular public authority or authorities. So here we go. The third condition is that the data sharing should support the delivery, administration, as in providing it, monitoring that it's been provided, or monitoring you, I'm not quite sure, the enforcement, making sure that service. Again, how would you agree? Well, it's so difficult to disagree with that. You're sort of saying, well, if you're providing a service, you want it to be served, so the data sharing is supposed to make that easier and better. And in a totalitarian state, maybe that's what is wanted. I'm not sure. Do I agree or disagree? I'm probably going to stay on the fence on that, because it seems to be a very loaded question. Let's carry on. Who will use the data sharing? And we just had a mention about that. all those people that we mentioned before and the additional people in Annex 4. So this is question 4. To what extent do you agree that the following government departments should become a public body eligible to share data for public service delivery? So should the Cabinet Office, the Department of Transport, the Department of Food, Environment and Rural Affairs, the Disclosure and Barring Service, should they be able to share all that information? I don't think so. I don't think any of them should share. I think if they are interested in you, then they should contact you, and or if you have to contact them, you have to identify yourself as an individual. I don't think they should hold all that information, because the information they hold on you... Did we do that? Hang on a minute. What is the information? I think somewhere it tells us... No, we haven't got that far yet. We haven't got that far. Bear with me. Bear with me, caller. That was question number 4. So question 5, let's have a look at question 5. To what extent do you agree that the following government departments should be able to share data for the identity verification objective? Did we not just do that? Isn't that the same question? It's pretty much the same. To what extent do you agree that the following government departments should be able to share data for identification verification objective? Again, I disagree. Question 6. Are there any public authorities not proposed in this consultation that you think should be able to share the data? Now, this isn't interesting, because you've got to say yes or no. Well, I would say no. Please provide the reason for your response. Well, here's a good place, I think, to say I don't think the data should be shared amongst any parts of government, because, in my opinion, you're dealing with one department. That department needs to deal with your need. Other departments, it's irrelevant. It should not, in my own opinion. So I would put something along those lines. Right, let's carry on, because I know I'm eating into your time. Who may process the data? So here we go. What data is going to be processed? And this is where I think it's slightly worrying. User's full name, date of birth, home address, email address, photographic images. So we have that on our passport and driving licenses, do we not? But no, we're going to have that. So that photographic images is a worrying thing, because we know that photo ID is being rolled out in supermarkets. They're capturing our faces in supermarkets when you use the tills, and they're capturing that. So that data could be linked together, which is a bit of a worrying, so they'll know where you've been. And now, they're not saying they're doing that at the moment, but that would be the next logical step. So I think we have to be a bit careful there. Various identifiers such as passport number, driving license. You might not want to give your passport number or driving license to a specific department. Attributes held by the government departments necessary for verifying the identity of an individual. Attribute. Well, what is that? Is that could be? What does that mean? Attributes. Could that mean be a CCJ, county court judgment? Could that be a parking fine that you've had? Could it be a criminal record? Could it be all sorts of things? You know, an altercation with somebody that somewhere has been registered with you, that you suddenly put down. How you voted, maybe in the last election. How many people are in your household? Attributes. What does that mean? Attributes could be anything. What you bought from an online store last week. Maybe I'm being a little pessimistic, but I'm not sure what that means. The outcome of identity checks previously performed on a user. The outline. So, of course, they're going to say that's for fraud, or to make sure that you are who you are, or that you're not some nefarious person or whatever. But at the same time, if there was some bad stuff done accidentally, and you know, that's what they're saying, is they can look at the results of the checks that they've done on you in the past. So you may have had a fine, gone to court, paid the fine, but then they know that little extra bit of information. Why would that influence and identify you? I find that a bit weird. Transactional data, for example, income. I think that's quite unnecessary to know how much your income, to bracket you, because this excuse me, this month you've earned so much, or you've changed your jobs and perhaps you've had to come down on your earnings, or you've come up and they're bracketing you and going, they know what your income is. I think that's not information. If you're just identifying yourself to pay your council tax, if you're identifying yourself to fill in your self-assessment or your tax return or whatever it is, they don't, well, obviously a tax return, they'd need to know your income, but for other things to access, you just want to get a parking permit for outside your house. Why do they need to know your income? Why do they need to have that as part of the data that they can? And I suppose, one of the questions they could ask you, say, well, okay, we just want to ask you a couple of identification questions. How much did you earn on your last tax return? Why should you have to tell them that? That's where I think this is an insidious intrusion in one's rights. So it gives you all of that. And so we get to question 7, nearly done. Sorry about the length of time this is. To what extent do you agree that the data items known as data attributes, and we just spoke about the attributes which we couldn't really define, as described, right, are consistent with and appropriate for the delivery? Well, I completely disagree with that. Absolutely, strongly disagree. Question 7, no thank you very much. What is the likely impact of new data sharing power? Well, they're saying it's going to improve the user experience and be nice and jolly and friendly and all this sort of rubbish. Well, and then they give you some case studies which they've, probably made up. I don't know. How do we know? It's just what they say is a case study. You can't go and email the person and say, actually, did this really happen? So then we get to question 8. To what extent do you consider the proposed sharing of data for identity verification object will lead to any individual or household losing their benefit? This is a difficult question because this is where it suddenly turns around on itself. So let's just reread that question, because the next couple of questions are like this. And I had to think about this, and I'm still not sure if I've got the right answer for this, and maybe you can help me out in the comments. Question 8. To what extent do you consider the proposed sharing of data for the identity verification object will lead to an individual or household losing any benefit? What extent do you so in other words, what extent do you consider the proposed sharing of data will lead to an individual losing benefit? I imagine that the sharing of data actually could be detrimental. So I would agree with that it could lead to people losing a benefit. Not necessarily a payment benefit, but a benefit to the service or whatever. I think it would. So I would, if there's any cleverer people than me, and there's probably everybody watching is cleverer than me, I would love to know how you answer question 8, because I would imagine that is the answer. But let's go on. Question 9. To what extent do you consider the proposed sharing of data will lead to an individual or household losing access to a service? So sharing your data, could that lead to losing a service? Yes, I think it might do. Because there might be things in those attributes, like you didn't pay a car fine, a parking fine or something, that may tinge how people would treat you. So I think, yes, I think that would lead to you potentially losing a service. So question 9, I would strongly agree that it's likely to not benefit you. That's how I would read that. And is this the last question? I think this is the last question. Question 10, do you think the proposed data sharing identity verification service will negatively impact on people who share any protected characteristics, such as disability, gender, reassignment, marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion? Yes, belief, sexual and orientation. Yes, I think it will. I think them holding information about us in the quantity and the number that they will impact. However, look at question 10 here, and very cunningly they've said, right, so I say, yes, I think it does. If yes, please provide the reason for your response, specifying the protected characteristic you think will be impacted. Comments on that, please, in the comments. What would be a good reply to that? If you think because they've just made this so that you would appear to be a nitpicking, silly person if you were to disagree with how wonderful this service is. But I think it's part of the slippery slope. We're already going down the slippery slope, and this is a power. The fact that it's not been advertised, the fact that it isn't, say, a year-long consultation, the fact that you can't go to village halls and civic centres and to have a debate about it with different ministers or your councillors to say, what does this, why should we have it, or all of that. The fact that it's being slipped in online and nobody really knows about it, I think makes me very, very suspicious of it and the powers that it's actually got in perhaps some of the small print and things like that. So you've only got until the 1st of March to get this done. I will leave the link in the description. Thank you for watching this, and I would be very interested in your comments. Thank you for watching this rather special episode.